Hello, Matt.
Good morning, Rick.
Good. Always start off with a joke right before we clap it in so that we're laughing as we enter.
You do?
I just want you guys to know we're in a great mood.
Just a bunch of idiots.
Well, gosh, maybe not that. Maybe not that. So what's going on, Matt? What you been up to? We haven't been doing as many you and I podcasts because I've been recycling all the other ones I've done for other people, putting those into our mix because some of them lead to some pretty interesting conversations because it's like, you go on a podcast about scaling a business and it's like completely different than maybe like the in the weeds personal training stuff that we would talk about.
Yeah, it's probably fun doing those, I bet. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it depends on the host, but sometimes I'll ask questions about things that I don't even think about. And it's like, oh, that's a great question. And so it just leads to really cool conversation. So I'm hoping you guys are enjoying that, but I also miss getting in the studio with this joker over here and pumping out some content for you guys. And we've got a good one today.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, just, what I've been doing, because I know you haven't been around much, is we actually trained another franchise last week.
Oh, did you now? What do you mean I haven't been around much? You know what I'm doing. You know what I do.
Nobody knows what you're doing.
Nobody knows what I'm doing. What are you doing? What is he doing in there? Nobody knows what you're doing. Yeah, what was that from?
Was that Wedding Crashers?
Yeah. What is he doing?
Meatloaf. Ma,
Meatloaf. What is she doing? I never know what she's doing. But, well, speaking of what's doing, how about this whole Russian-Ukraine thing? We'll dig into that.
No.
Okay, great. You know what you call it?
I don't even watch the news, man. I am fully vested into Alloy and opening a franchise. I don't have time.
That a boy. Well, I'll just catch you up on the brief, some of it briefly after the podcast, but it's not much to catch you up on, really.
Yeah.
What do you call
let me know.
But what do you call a Russian bedpan?
I don't know.
A Putin. Yes, back on the dad jokes, folks.
I'm impressed because this was an impromptu podcast. That means you've just been sitting on that one for a while.
Nah, I just pulled it up a minute ago.
Oh,
Thought
really?
it was pretty funny. It's relevant.
Did you just look it up right now?
Yeah, I really don't want to talk about
you
Ukraine.
Literally just looked it up.
I did right before I walked in here, and it was the second one that popped up on the Dad Jokes Instagram page.
You got me. I didn't expect
I didn't get you. But, I mean, I didn't get you in a good setup. But, it's a relevant topic because of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, so I figured it'd be a good one. Anyway, all that being said, I put an obscene amount of effort into trying to sneak dad jokes into these. Matt, and I'm only 4 episodes in. So
it's a bad one.
So, but what we do want to talk about, and the most important thing is upskilling yourself and maybe the career trajectory of the career trajectory of a personal trainer. How do you become a great coach? And if you want to go beyond that, how do you do that? And I think the best lens to do this would be to talk about Matt's journey because he is the person that would essentially fit the mold for that people might look to and say, someday I would like to do that. And what does that mean? How do you go from part-time coach to full-time coach to, writing programs for thousands of gyms worldwide to, then being the VP of program design for a franchise? I mean, it's a lot. It's a journey and it doesn't happen by accident. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll be somewhat interviewing you, just asking you about your journey. And I think it's the best way to go about it.
Rock on. Let's do it.
So I think if there's people listening that are personal trainers, and there are, or you own a small personal training gym, you probably had a similar journey to get here. But let's talk about yours, Matt. So when you first came to Alloy, you were working part-time at an LA Fitness. Is that correct?
I worked at an LA Fitness and kind of had my own thing, and I did that for about 5 years.
Oh, I didn't realize you had been doing it that long. Okay. So 5 years at an LA Fitness, and then what prompted you to come here and just, again, poke your head in?
Well, it finally kind of ran its course and I needed to step my game up, really. I mean, it was nice when you're early 20s and money wasn't that important. It was just kind of,
right.
I'm like, all right, I need to make this career. I need to look for a new opportunity and I needed to find somebody that knew what they're doing. So I stumbled upon what was then at the time North Point Fitness. Mm-hmm. And I sent an email. And to actually got an email response back from you, and you said, "Yeah, sure, I'll sit down. I'm happy to talk to you." And then after we talked, you're like, "Hey, I don't have any positions, but I would be willing to do a mentorship." So literally got my foot in the door. But that alone probably was the biggest thing that impacted my career.
And at that time, I don't think that you didn't have to pay us, but we also weren't paying you for that. Is that correct?
No, it was 6 weeks, just totally free.
Right. So, I think that's the first step. So step one would be if you're a coach now and you want to get better at your craft, find someone who's doing what you want to be doing and reach out and see if you can buy some of their time, or, like Matt traded, we had some free labor to help around the place, and Matt was able to gain, an education because of that. But he was willing to give up his time and set his ego aside and say, hey, I want to learn what it is that you guys do. And so I think that's the first step. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I tell people this day, I learned more in that mentorship in 2 weeks than I knew in my entire 5-year career, which is sad, which, a lot of people that, they come out of school or however they get into training, you don't know what you don't know. And then you see somebody doing it really well and at scale, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
what was I doing?
And you've heard this from business mentorships too. It's like, find somebody who's doing what you want to do,
right,
or already done it, and see if there's a way that you can somehow get aligned with them, right? And one way to do that would be, for Matt, you had to forego probably some income for some peak hours and shuffle your clients around to come in and do a mentorship to level up your game. But you were smart enough to understand that to do that, there's got to be some sacrifice.
Sure. Yeah. So first part was, I got myself, fortunate in that mentorship, and I managed to weasel my way into a job at the end of it. But what it did is it took me from maybe a C-level coach and got me up more, maybe a B+ to an A- coach. I learned how to train people properly, learned what good program design is. I got to learn, how customer interactions should look, what good solid coaching cues from coaches have been doing a long time. Honestly, I think I stole half of the stuff that I say to people from you and the Joe's and the other guys that worked and did it for a long time. And I would just repeat it. It was like, well, why should I make up something else? Right.
Right. Yeah. It's, and I remember obviously meeting with you, and I thought, this guy's pretty cool. And it's like, if he's willing to give us some free help, and I like to, understanding what this trajectory looks like, first finding someone who's done what you've done and ask them if they will give you help. I think if you meet someone who's very serious, who's willing to give you free time, or give up their time for free to learn from you, and you can you have the bandwidth or the structure to work them into the mix, I think it's sort of a responsibility to do so, because, I think for me, I've done all of the steps that you're talking about as well, right? I just went through them earlier, but at the same time, it's like, well, when you know how important they are, you'd be remiss not to offer those same opportunities to someone else. And then it might even be, selfishly, it was like, well, maybe this person will materialize and become part of our team, which obviously you certainly have. And we'll talk about, how far you've come, since that point. But first and foremost, again, look for someone who's doing what you're doing or what you want to do, and they've already done it well, and see if there's some way you can get aligned with them. Join their mastermind, or, get on a phone call with them, or go work for them. Matt was willing to come work for free. How many people do that? And I've heard really successful people with very similar stories. I was listening to a podcast recently, my buddy Alex, Hermosian. He did the same thing. Like, he moved from Baltimore to LA and worked for a guy in a gym as an apprentice for free, just to learn the gym business, right? And he was sharp. It didn't take him long, it's just like you, 6 weeks. It's like, okay, I think I get what we're doing here. So there's that. Now, what's the next step? So let's say that you're staying as a coach, right? We won't talk about like business ownership just yet, but you're a trainer, you found someone, you learned, oh, this is how it works. Like, maybe you do a mentorship at like a Mike Boyle's, or you go to an Alloy, and, we have an accredited intern provider here. So you do something like that. What's the next step to further your education?
Yeah. So inside of that mentorship, and just to hit back, is like, you learn how to obviously train, you learn how to treat customers, you learn what things are done to kind of retention wise and keep people happy and keep them in front of you, which is vastly important, because if you can't keep people in front of you, they ain't paying you. Right. Then you start, getting outside of your four walls. So part of, obviously a good mentor is able to guide you in good educational places. So, I was, again, fortunate. You literally spoke on the Perform Better tour, which is just a, huge group of really, really smart people in the fitness industry and outside of it just a little bit. So literally had the opportunity to go and learn from people other places. All right.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you're working still within the framework of your craft in the industry, but you got to get out of your facility. Like, you only know what you know. And I think in a lot of ways, at least for us, the things that we're teaching are reinforced at shows like that, because those are the same influences that I've had, because those are my peers, if you will, and they might be specialists in training athletes or overhead or injury rehab or back, foremost, spinal experts in the world, whatever those things are, those were already our influences. So, for you to go and say, okay, sit down and listen to these experts, it's like, oh, it was also a reinforcement that you were on the right path, that the best in the world were reinforcing the things you had already learned. So that's really good. But yeah, I think you've got to deep dive, and whether it's a kettlebell class or a kettlebell certification course or TRX or, fascia or functional movement screen or just any and all of those things that revolve directly around your craft that will make you a better coach, I think is where you go, almost in conjunction with finding someone who's done what you've done, right? Because we're just talking about coaching at this point. We're not talking about straight business. It's more like, okay, to learn to be a better coach, where are people doing really high volume coaching and doing it well, and how can I learn from them? Check. Maybe they have a course online, whatever. It's the best investment you can make, period. Great. Next, okay, then I need to up my skills around the tools and the crafts and the things that I use. And I would say to, broadly speaking, make that varied. You run the risk of like these deep dives, and I think we all did that when we were early coaches. Sure. You would go learn something and you come back and you're like, everybody's doing that forever. And it would be like right. one tool, right? One tool in your toolbox.
Back when kettlebells came back. It's all kettlebells, baby.
Yeah, everything's kettlebells, all kettlebells all the time. It's like, okay, then you start to realize, okay, probably not that. There's like parts and pieces of each one of these things that you learn that you can apply to your clients. But maybe not just one deep dive on one tool or modality. So make sure that you look at that through the right lens as well. But that's where you would go next, is like learn how to learn your craft, be an amazing coach with coaching cues and form and the tools that are most effective for your target audience. Right. And then what's next? So that's exactly what you did. What did you do next?
Well, so outside of that, I mean, I did that for a long time and just, worked myself from a part-time trainer, doing full-time, getting outside my four walls, learning what, other cool things that could keep me excited, keep kind of the fire burning, right? Which eventually worked, which many personal trainers, their kind of career path is like you're their trainer and you work yourself up into a sales position, right? That's kind of the path. I mean, it's kind of is what it is, right?
Well, and I'll tell you as a CEO and an owner, it's a more valuable skill if someone can drive revenue.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Like servicing revenue is a great skill, but it's not as valuable to the owner necessarily, not as individuals. I'm not saying this person's more important to me than this person, not as human beings, but I mean, as a skill set to the business, sales is very important.
Right.
And so that would be, even if you're just a solopreneur and you're just selling for yourself, it's definitely a skill that you need to learn. So then it's like, okay, well, I've learned, I've had my eyes open to how this thing works. I've taken a deep dive on the tools. I know how to coach those. I can actually coach a really good session. Check. How do I then drive business to my business, if that makes sense? Right. Even if I'm an individual and I'm working at a Gold's Gym and it's like I only eat what I kill, well, you better figure out how to market and sell, right? But more importantly, sales. And so, that was your next step, right? Is learning our sales process.
Learning the sales process, learning how to sell, in person, which again kind of forces you, all right, now I got to get back out and go back to those Perform Betters and listen to different people speak. Now I got to listen to, different books, different podcasts,
right?
To pump up my game.
Right. It's like you're literally stacking skills, right? One step at a time. Right. It's like learn your craft, be good at that. Check. Okay. Now I'm going to learn how to sell. Well, there's a whole subset of, there's massive amounts of education and videos and whatever, right. Certainly this day and age that can teach you how to sell. And even just like we have our own curriculum here on how to sell exactly what we do, right? And you had to learn that. But each one of these steps, what was your thought process as you kept leveling up? Where, for me at least, and you can speak to this, there's some level of like discomfort with each step.
Absolutely.
Did you experience that as well as you were growing?
Oh, absolutely. You get that imposter syndrome, right?
Every time, right?
I was in there. I'm like, why am I in here? Like, why'd they let me do this?
Why are they trusting their business with me?
Yeah. So you go through that and, gut it out, and it forces you, we've had podcasts on that, to step up your game, right? If you got to make yourself confident and know that you can do it. And then once you start believing it and growing that confidence, learning new things, you continue to grow. And after that, so first part, we learned the craft and we learned going out, learned a lot of different modalities and way things are done and learned the best way to do it. Then we learned how to sell. And then from there, a lot of it turned into, obviously we got sales stuff, but there's a lot of human behavior kind of things started happening. Right. When you're sitting in a seat in front of somebody, You got to like learn how to speak to them to help them the best.
Body language, all the little things that get lumped into sales. It's a lot of human interaction. And I'll tell a story about you that you might have even forgotten, but it was really funny to me. So when we moved Matt into the seat, he was so good with his interpersonal skills on the floor as a coach. It's like, wow, this guy would make a great salesperson. But when we first talked to you about it, you didn't want to do it. You were somewhat resistant to it because he's like, I hear this from a lot of people, like, I don't sell, or I'm not good at sales.
Sure.
And I don't think that's true. I think most people shortcut, or maybe they don't understand what sales is, right? And we have a system, and I will tell you that you are infinitely more successful if you sell to a system. So if you're one of the coaches that's listening to this, and this is your career path, go find a sales system that works. Again, there's 1,000,001 ways to sell in the fitness industry, and many of them have been documented. Or again, find that mentor that does sales really well and run their script, but follow a script, right? Mm-hmm. Start out with that. And so, we taught Matt our starting point session, which is our sales process. There was a script. And the story that I remember about you that was so funny was, we have this adage and it's a sales adage, which whoever's talking is losing. So you just ask a bunch of questions and you get people to talk about themselves and their goals, and you keep peeling that onion until you get down to the core of why they're there. And then also that applies to when you actually make a prescriptive suggestion for what someone should do, like, don't talk over them, just be quiet. And that's the strategy. And we practiced it. But when Matt, first time he sat down with someone, he closed a sale. And back then we were selling contracted agreements. So he sold a 1-year agreement at $429 a month or something like that, which is it's a $5,000 value sale. Right. And I remember your story was like, I was, I pushed the paper across and I said, Mrs. Johnson, our most successful clients do this, and this is what I would recommend. And then the training was to just be quiet and wait for them to talk.
Painful.
And I go, how was it? He goes, horrible. You go, I thought I was going to black out. He said, my whole world came crashing in, and my lens got smaller and smaller until I was looking through this pinhole of light. I thought I was going to black out. Just pass out in your chair. And then the person goes, okay. Right. And then boom, the lights are back on, and you're like, that was easy. And then boy, once you start getting good at it, it's somewhat of a game, right? But it's a skill, and you got to practice it. And to your point, you have to get uncomfortable in a new role, which means you've got to, again, you've got to level up. You're going to have imposter syndrome. But as you level up, what you'll see is obviously there's more revenue and income for you as a director, is what we call that position, right? Head trainer, whatever that would be. There's more income potential there. So every time your skill set goes up, your opportunity vehicle should go up with that, right? Even if you own your own business, if you're a solopreneur and you learn how to sell, you're going to be able to sell more people into your own service. So you could also say, well, my opportunity vehicle would get better if I could learn how to train more than one person at a time and go to small group training. Well, that means I can now backload more clients. So if I can go out and learn how to sell and talk to people, I can then grow my business. So my opportunity vehicle is bigger, even though it's just me, because I've learned how to train people differently, and now I've learned how to sell them into this new thing so I can increase my client base and help more people. Yeah,
which inevitably, turned into, from doing that for years, leveling up, learning how to speak to people, and obviously get to sell, learning human behavior, worked its way. Obviously, nutrition started becoming a big thing. So going, learning more about that. And then it turns into the business side of things. You start.
So that's the next step.
Yeah. You start having to learn how to be an owner, essentially, right? Because you start being held accountable, right? What's our marketing spend and all that kind of stuff comes into play. And that's the next step.
Yes. The next step would be business metrics. And maybe you're charged with, running a gym as a general manager, which is okay, maybe you're not just sales, now you're managing. Sometimes those, and certainly in our low labor model, those can be one in the same position, but it's a different skill set, right? To learn how to manage other people is a big deal, right? It could be a whole other skill set. It's very difficult to do that. Again, there's systems and there's things in place. If you'll just be willing to go out and learn it and practice it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. And so to your point though, learning business metrics is something that, it's like, okay, maybe you're in a profit share situation. Well, that means that not only do you have to drive sales, but you also have to not spend the business out of house and home to get those sales, because now you're rewarded with, a profit, not necessarily just top line revenue or just gross sales. So it's okay. Well, now you have a different skill set, right? And again, if you notice this theme, it's like every time you up your skill set, you should be creating then another opportunity vehicle for yourself. So they're kind of leveling up in this sort of step-by-step process. It's like stack skills, get a better opportunity. Stack skills, get a better opportunity. I think for anyone listening to this that's younger, that's in the industry, like notice the order of that. Stack skills, then get a better opportunity, right? It's like, I think in some ways these days, folks, want to get the opportunity first and then learn it. And I will tell you, as a business owner, I don't want to pay you to learn on my dime. I just don't. I want to bring you in for a skill set that you already have. And so if you're going to, first get the skill set, then move into the role, at least have the basic skills in place. So go take your courses and stuff, knowing where you want to go, then expect the opportunity vehicle. It doesn't come the other way around. You don't work somewhere for 3 months and be like, hey, I want to be the CEO, right?
Right.
It's like, you don't have the skill set. You don't deserve the job.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine just say walking into that sales seat without all the other stuff behind it, right?
No, in franchising, we provide a lot of the bandwidth because we give you sort of all of these tools, right? It's like, here's what you need to do to get your coaches up to speed. Here's a sales system that you can sell to. And we shortcut a lot of these processes, but they still need to be done, right? And I think if we're advising franchisees to go out and find their operator, as an example, find somebody who's done it before, right? You don't want to find like a raw beginner who's never done anything and then place your whole business in their hands.
Yeah, it's find somebody, they can guide you, first teach you your craft, right? Learn how to do it. They can then guide you to how to keep growing, right? Whether it's books, podcasts, certifications, getting outside your four walls. It's you can't downplay the importance of that, right? Because going into it blind and just being like, you're going to try to figure it out on your own, it's just dumb.
And why?
Right.
Why? It's like everybody stands on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
Right.
Why try to figure it out yourself?
Right. Exactly. The same exact point. But you're right. Like, you'd be crazy not to shortcut the process by learning from other people's mistakes or successes, either way. Right. Okay. So stacking skills, right? Now you're up to sales. Now you're learning about business metrics. Anything else beyond that? What about the human behavior stuff? Because one thing that you guys might know is Matt's official title is Vice President of, Program Design, but the programming is the product, by the way, right? So we do personal training, and there's a lot of energy and effort that you don't even see that goes into putting an amazing customer experience around just a workout. Because if it's just get hot and sweaty, it's not enough anymore, right? A lot of people do that. So it's like, all right, well, how do we put an amazing customer experience around that? That takes even a different skill set. So talk about the books and the courses and the things that you've paid attention to.
We do a lot of, we had this one company that I took a cert through, and it's called The Differentiator, and just kind of talks about different human behaviors and how to use that. We used Precision Nutrition. It's always a great one for nutritional, but it talks about human behavior and habit change and all that stuff. So you really start combining all those things. Reps in the trenches, honestly, just been doing it, learned what flows best, how to give the best customer experience. That's how you get there. The one thing I didn't talk about is a big one is how to manage people. We
touched on that a bit, but we didn't talk a whole lot about it.
That's another kind of level up in a skill. Would you agree? Literally going from your own part-time trainer, full-time trainer, to you're doing sales, to then you're running the whole team, right?
Right. Let's say just in sales, you're now the VP of sales, but you're running a sales team. It's a completely different skill set, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So getting to that point and learning how to keep people accountable and motivated is that was probably one of the harder ones for me personally. I just really never done it, because sales scripts, it's still on me. I can follow the play, I can do the play, but getting other people on board and doing it, that's probably the hardest one.
Yeah, I would say that for anyone, but that's why there's more income potential for that role. Sure. Again, stack skills, then create better opportunities for yourself, because it's hard to manage people and to motivate people and to understand that each person is an individual, but yet you're trying to fit into this framework of this system, right? And it's a skill that can be developed, though, after all. So, okay, so managing other people. I know that like you and I are big on the same type of books, which typically don't revolve as much anymore about how to swing kettlebells and things like that, obviously. But the human behavior side of things, as far as creating an amazing customer experience, I know what Predictably Irrational, and
there's
many,
lots of good things in there, and it's kind of just learning why people come to you and what they need and what kind of triggers them is hugely important, right? We learned a long time ago that people don't come to our gym for workouts, right? Why do they really come? And that's how we know those spots and create that good customer experience kind of things.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it, because once you have that skill set, you can then then you move up to the next level. So say you move up to where Matt is, where he came in as a part-time, working here for free, now as VP of Program Design for all of our licensees and all of our franchises. That's a big deal, right? And then now customer experience, because that's the product. Like I said, it goes along with that. It's like you've got to really understand psychology. You've got to understand the true motivation. There's so much education around this, you guys. I mean, I took a Harvard course a few years ago, because it's like, I mean, geez, you can literally cherry pick deep dive education on any of these subjects that we're talking about today. And it's on you to do it. It's out there. It's free, most of it. And some of it's paid, but I think I paid $1,200 to take a Harvard business course, and it was about, it was called Innovative Disruption or something like that. And it was a Clay Christensen course, and it was literally about how to define what it is that your product does for people. Right. That was it. Job of the product is what they called it. And it was like, all right, what do we really do for people? And yes, we do workouts, but there's so much more in it. And the more you understand that, then you can understand then how to take that product to market in a relevant way. And that affects like marketing and messaging and sales systems and all the other things, right? But that's the highest level. You definitely have to get out of your industry. You have to think outside the box. And those are things that you've done well. But again, you're uncomfortable then, because now you're taking a Harvard course that you wouldn't think would apply to a studio personal training business, but sure as heck does. But now you have to have a different set of lenses and a skill set to take that information, filter it correctly, and then apply it to your business model, right? Yep. Which is a whole different skill set. And then sell that downstream to your team so that they can buy into it. And they understand that, like, yes, kettlebells are awesome, but the reason we don't do, kettlebell snatches to failure with our, client avatar is because of this. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. There's a lot that goes into that.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And then the biggest thing, you said multiple times, is it's uncomfortable. Like to this day, there's always things that make me uncomfortable. And it's credit to you. I mean, you just keep pushing us in that direction. You're gonna make you better whether you like it or not. Well, if it makes you feel better,
I'm also uncomfortable, because I'm also on the same path, right? Well, we've done a whole podcast on imposter syndrome. It's like, listen, if you don't feel uncomfortable, it's so cliche these days, get comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's true. And with that, it's going to come doubt, imposter syndrome, and all those things. And the only way to make those go away is just keep leveling up your skills. And as soon as you level up your skills and that moves you into another opportunity vehicle, guess what? You got to do it again, and you got to do it again, and you got to do it again. I mean, just going from licensing to franchising for me and for you has been a real eye opener, because it's like, okay, in licensing, we teach you how to fish. We give you the stuff. You might fish okay, you might not, but like, hey, we couldn't invoke a lot of control, right? We weren't necessarily held accountable to your results. Right. Well, now in franchising, it's like, wow, we got to pick really good owners. That's a skill set, right? The sales process is totally different. So we got to learn that. Marketing is different. And then certainly training and accountability is completely different, right? Yep. And that's where you guys, the team, comes in. So it's been an upskilling for all of us. But I hope that helps you guys understand, what really goes into, a career trajectory in training. And it doesn't mean that in any of those levels you can stay there because that's what you want to do. You don't necessarily have to go from part-time trainer to, fitness franchisor. But at the same time, I hope it helps you understand with each step what really needs to be done, to get your skill set to a point where you can create a better opportunity vehicle for yourself. Because I want people to make a career in fitness, and Absolutely. This is a great way to do it. Yeah. So thanks for sharing.
Well, thank you.
And I'm sorry you didn't like my dad joke.
It was bad. You got to do better.
I thought it was pretty good. That's my next imposter syndrome is my joke telling's got to get better. That's what I'm working on while Matt tries to grow the franchise. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.